Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adrian. With Halloween just around the corner, I thought I'd carry on reviewing a few horror-inspired TTRPGs for you either to play on that night or any other time of the year. And I'm going with a big one because this is the reprint of Aliens, a game that Free League brought out 5 years ago. It kind of seemed to upset a few people a few years, well, last year it was, when they said they're actually going to come out with a new edition. We're going to sort of a 2.0. We are going to compact some of the rules, make it streamlined based on feedback that we've had. And well, yeah, it does, because the first thing you're going to notice when you pick this up, this is 324 pages, where the first edition was 400. So we've lost nearly a quarter of the depth of the book. Now, this is not going to be me directly comparing both books, because I have played first edition, I've played through the starter set, I've played through part of the next book as well, so I've got a good understanding, but I never really read the core rule book because it made me fall asleep. It was, as a dyslexic, I really struggled with that whole black background, sort of green writing, white writing, things like that. It was a tough read, and at 400 pages as well, there was a lot to read. But so I've played this for several hours, so going through it, I have identified a few differences and I think improvements, which is good. One being the layout, the fact that the colour changes it's so much easier and, for me, enjoyable to read. If it's enjoyable to read, I'm going to get through it and get it, played and ran. Obviously, this currently isn't out if you're watching it. I believe it comes on general release on the 18th of November. And when it is, I will insert links to the video descriptions. Again, my affiliate link through TTRPG if you want just the PDF, or I'll link you to a variety of shops you can go and buy the physical copies from. Hopefully, if you like this video, then you'll go and pre-order it. So, right, let's actually just get in to the core rulebook. As I do with all of these, I'm just going to take you through page by page, sort of discuss it. I much prefer this front cover. Again, there's me going, I'm not going to do a direct comparison between the two. And I might do a follow-up video, actually, and sort of like dig further into the first edition and try and sort of find some discrepancies. I don't really think there's any merit in it. It does actually feel relatively backwards compatible. So if you have got some of the other books, I think it's not going to be a massive leap to, if you've got this edition and sort of like the Colonial Marines. I know Free League is saying that it's going to be relatively compatible, but I think I'm sure I read somewhere that the Colonial Marine book is going to get a update. I'm not sure whether I dreamt that. I just have in my head that is coming. But I do like this front cover. It's pretty frightening with that whole face hugger jumping out. So getting in, actually, I did look at the first edition book. This cover, this map of the sort of Middle Heavens, as it's called here by Wayland Yutani, it's a little bit easier to read in parts because the inside cover of the first edition book, I'm doing it already, comparing the two, was in colour, and it was a little bit standoutish, but we're going to see this sort of colour theme throughout the book, and there's nothing like a big rule book with lots of lore in it to make you realise that when you say you love Aliens and Alien, I don't know a lot about it. I did kind of watch the latest TV series, so there's going to be specific locations in here that I assume are from films and things like that. But yeah, I haven't watched any of I think it's probably 3 or 4 movies I'm behind. I just no, I like the first two, possibly the fourth one. So yeah, I'm a fan of the first two, so we'll go with that. So we've got the inside cover here, list of the playtesters, lead designers, artists, the writers, etc. And as you'd imagine, this also, as you're going to see here, by Sean Tomkin and Matt Click, comes with solo rules. So, and that wasn't in the first edition. So we've got a chunk of stuff that's gone out because we've lost 25% of the book, and we've also got solo rules included, which is, I think it's testament to how much they've compacted this actually down. And then we're going to get into the contents, which is, you can see, is quite a lot of pages. We've got 6 pages of contents, and that's because Free League, well, for Alien as well, for specifically, they like to sort of break it down to all of its components, which does make it quite nice to jump around the book. It's all hyperlinked, and hyperlinked well. I remember Rob saying that you want to be able to link back between pages. This does it. It will jump you around the different pages. But chapter 1, we're going to get Space is Hell. This is just a little bit of background into here, the type of careers you're going to have playing aliens, the difference between cinematic and campaign play, the sort of themes and the horror. Then chapter 2 is starts character creation. 3 is skills and talents. 4 is the combat section, which, as you can see, the combat rules are far smaller than they were in first edition. Chapter 5 is going to give us gears and technology. And then 6 is basically dealing with space travel and these really good easy space combat rules. Being the Games Master is Game Mother, as you're called in this. We get corporations and governments, planet systems, details on alien species, campaign play section with loads and loads of random tables and some locations and a few NPCs, an idea of what's going on here. So we've got things like Jackson Star and this Novgorod station, and the Taurus sector, which I'm assuming are probably from films, and people will probably just put that in the comments going, yep, this is from this. Life paths, love Traveller, love Jay Lasard's Git series. It's just a different way of rolling the character background with a load of random tables. And then finally the book is going to close here with Last Survivor, which is the solo rules. I haven't had an opportunity to try the solo rules out, so I'm not really going to cover any of the solo rules. I do play quite a lot of solo things, so I'm looking forward to getting into it. I might do a follow-up video just talking specifically here about the solo rules. I then got some upgrades, equipment, and character sheets, and as you can see, all hyperlinked as we go through the book. So chapter 1, Space is Hell. This is going to just give you the idea of what it's like to be a games master in the world, which is where it's talking about the story mother, frontier life. So what sort of characters are the players going to be, and the sort of game that you're going to be, the game you're going to build with the players. Throughout the book, you got all these ships, logs, things, which is just going to be building an idea of, what's going on, hints and tips, lore dumps, things like that. You'll be pleased to know the physical copy of the book is a damn sight clearer here as well. So you can actually read these a lot better than you can do off this PDF. We then get into the timeline, which I didn't realise it was like 2180s, which is when Aliens is set. But Peter Whalen started his infamous TED Talk speech 2 years ago. So yeah, we're on the timeline. It's quite interesting actually reading through the timeline to say, when you watch the films, you're kind of watching the action or the suspense. I didn't, naively, I've never read any of it. I've never read any of the additional books or comics to find out. So it's actually very interesting because when I sort of played through the first edition, I didn't read or go through any of this. Then give you a different idea of the way that the sort of careers that the players can pick. Do you want to do a space truckers, which is kind of like a Firefly inspired adventure or one shot or campaign setting? Do you want to go with the colonial marines, make it more of a military base setting? Do you want to be the frontier colonists, which really is the sort of plot of Aliens, the people on the planet converting it? Or, and this should be mandatory for every game session, the company reps. You don't want everyone to play the company reps, but you definitely want to be inserting a company rep into one of the other three, because they're not necessarily the bad guys. They're there for profit, capitalism, to make money, and their goal is more important than everyone surviving, because in essence, this is a horror survival game. The Games Master is going to be called the Game Mother, and you'd expect them to run a game, but they're going to be running the game in 2 different ways. So we've got the cinematic play or campaign play. Cinematic play is going to come from the books or the adventures that are out, like the starter set. I should caveat that this book heavily implies that you've already got the starter set or hints at it. And value for money, go and buy the starter set. It's got some rules, a load of NPCs in there, dice, dials that you're going to need for equipment, and a load of cards for initiative and game effects. You don't have to have it, but it's £20-25, so it's probably still only $20-25. Value for money. I'm sure Free League sell the starter sets like a lot of companies do at zero profit, or probably even at a loss when you're looking at the value of money that you're going to get in there. But cinematic play is, I think, where a lot of people enjoy this, where it'd be like a movie, and everyone's got their own goals and objectives they're trying to achieve. So it will come as a one shot or 2 or 3 sort of closed adventures. You already get a pre-generated character with all your motivations and goals. Or you can go with campaign setting. The campaign setting in this does seem a lot more open and easier to create. I did struggle when I was reading first edition to wrap my head round how I'd make a campaign setting work. This does, when we get to that setting, does seem better. Okay, I haven't ran a campaign in it. I'm just the way I'm reading the rules and the random tables and the information I get seems a lot easier for a games master. Probably should call it game mother to run. We then get the 3 themes in the game. So it's space horror, obviously sci-fi action with a sense of wonder, because the players are going to be discovering new things. There's a lot of hints and tips in this about how, if you're going to do the campaign setting, that, you know, don't just throw an alien in the very first scene. Hint at things, slowly build. The dice in the game are D6. We've got different measures of time. So we've got a round, a stretch, and a shift. You're going to want to remember them because different equipment and different powers and talents, as it's called in this game, certain things will happen. You'll be able to do it once per round, maybe once per stretch, or once per shift. Okay, and a round is 5 to 10 seconds. A stretch is 5 to 10 minutes, and a shift is 5 to 10 hours. Okay, and they're mainly used for combat, stealth, recovery. It's just things to remember. You will need cards for this because it does use initiative for cards for the initiative. And if you haven't, just go and get a deck of cards and just use a 1 through to 10. So that will cover everything in there. The game itself uses exclusively D6. You will need D6 of 2 different colours. And you're probably going to need a pool of 6 to 8, somewhere around, well, technically you could go up to 10 of one colour. And you could even have even more of another colour, but definitely have 2 different colours. And in this game, you're basically looking for 6s, or as it puts on this symbol here. And you don't want 1s, which is the face hugger. So if you do get the starter set, it's going to come with some dice in there, which is going to give you those symbols. But yeah, remember, 6, good, 1, bad. Okay, character creation. Character creation is broken down into 10 easy steps. So choose your career. Well, obviously you're going to choose your name first. Determine your attributes. Determine your skills. Choose a talent. So you only get 1. Actually, solo, you get 2. I didn't notice that in the rules. Choose your name is 5, actually. Okay. Must have missed that on my first read through. Decide on your appearance. Decide on your personal agenda. Choose your buddy and rival. Yeah, someone you're going to like, someone you're going to hate. If you are going for the cinematic view, you're going to know that off the pre-generated NPC, generated character you're going to get. Pick your gear and your signature item, and then roll for your starting cash. Attributes in this game, there's 4. There's strength, agility, wit, and empathy. And when you're picking it, you're going to get 14 points. You can spread them around there, and they will all be from 2 to 4 points. Okay, apart from your key attribute, you can go to 5. We'll look at key attributes and how you work those out in a second. But strength is going to be your physical power and endurance. Agility is going to do things like speed, body control, motor skills. Wits, intelligence, alertness, sharpness. And then empathy is your charisma. Most of the player characters, probably, depending on what you allow, will be human. But you can actually allow an android in here because androids do add a certain amount of tension. Androids are going to get a few additional attribute points, and their maximums are going to be higher. They're not going to be able to push skills, which I'll talk about in a second, but due to that, they're never going to suffer any stress. But also they then won't panic either, and they do take damage differently to humans, so they're not going to get to roll on the really interesting. I think it's interesting critical tables. I love critical tables for injuries. Androids are just going to take damage because, you know, they're technically a robot. The players, so you're going to have attributes and skills in this game, and then when you come to make a roll, you're just going to add those 2 together, and that's your pool of D6 that you're going to be rolling. So you will get a talent, which features something like that. It's normally a sort of rule-breaking mechanic, or it's going to allow you to roll a few additional dice in certain situations. You are going to get stressed as time goes on, which is a mechanic that's going to build up, and the more stressed you are, the more dice you're going to get. You need to make sure they're a different colour for when you roll the pool, because stress dice work differently mostly to your standard skill and talent dice, attribute dices. And then you're going to get resolve, Your resolve is your mental resilience, and that's going to be made up of an average of wits and empathy. And your hit points, instead of just being strength in this version, it's going to be the average of your strength and agility. Then you get things like, putting your name in, your appearance, your personal agenda, what you're trying to achieve, your buddies. So who do you like in the party? Who do you dislike? Who's your sort of rival in there? You're going to pick your equipment throughout as where you go. You're going to have some things like consumables. Consumable rules are dealt with differently in here. You're going to need the trackers from the core rule set, or you're going to need, you could get away with just putting D6 down. But basically, what you do when you shoot a gun or you use something that's consumable, you're going to roll a die, and if you roll anything other than a 1, it doesn't run out of ammo. If you roll a 1, you're going to reduce that down. So if it started with 4, for argument's sake, so you use it, you're going to roll after you've used it. If you roll a 2 or higher, you technically haven't used any ammo. Your ammo isn't running out. So it's done in an abstract way. But if you roll a 1 and you had 3 in it, you'd knock that down to 2. Okay, so that's just really how the supply rolls work down here. Okay, character development. This is an experience-based game, so it's not level-based. So after the end of every sort of session, you're going to give experience out, and then you can use that experience to increase things like your skills and buy additional talents. Attributes, from what I can see, won't change once you start. Now, when you're going to pick your career, there are several careers. Most of these are going to be very familiar if you've watched any of the films or read any of the comics. And each of them are going to give you a key attribute here. And this is the one that's saying you can take to 5. You've got some key skills that you can start. I think they can go up to 3 when you start them, and your additional cash. It's got some ideas of some names, personal agendas, appearance. You're going to roll a d6 for some gear and a signature item. But more importantly, you're going to roll or pick a talent. I would probably allow my players to pick talents on here. So, for example, the Colonial Marine can either choose banter, so that the stress of you and everyone in short range drops 2 steps for every stretch spent in a safe space. So that's that 5 to 10 minute time. Then overkill. When you roll a 9 or higher on a panic roll, you can ignore the result and instead go to overkill. Or precise shooter. When making a supply roll for ammo, you get 2 dice fewer than the ammo rating to a minimum of 1. So you're going to less likely to run out of dice. But you've got things like colonial marshals, company agents. Always have a company agent. Kids, medic, officer, pilot, roughneck, scientists in there as well. So they've got all their own sort of special abilities and equipment. Skills and talents. The skills in this game they're sort of tied to an attribute, but you don't necessarily have to do it. And the skills are heavy machinery and stamina and close combat, which work off strength. We've got mobility, range combat and piloting off agility, observation, comtech, survival off wits, and then command, manipulation and medical aid off empathy. So it's up to the games master which combination that you use, but you can, as a player, basically say, I want to do it in a certain different way. So for example, if you were doing piloting, you could there's times where you could argue that you may want to use that off your wits instead of necessarily doing physical stuff. You're thinking about trying to make maneuvers and planning. So it's up to you to work alongside the games master, and they'll either accept it or not. And say you then get your pool of d6, and you would just roll all of them. So your attribute plus your skill, and you're looking to get 1 6. If you get 1 6, you succeed. If you get more than 1 6, you may do it quicker, faster. You can show off while you're doing it, or some other effect that you or the games master may come up with. If you get 1s, it's absolutely fine in this one. So it's actually changed, because in the first edition, if you're stressed, I should have said you add your stress die into it, and I'll come on to stress in a minute. And in the first version, if you rolled a 1 on any of the stress dice, you automatically failed. So if you had a 10 in your attribute plus skill pool, and you rolled 10 6s, and you rolled 1 stress dice and it was a 1, you failed. In this, the way I'm reading it, that doesn't happen anymore. All that happens is going to trigger the stress mechanic. Okay, and if you roll a 6 on the stress dice, they still count as an additional success, which is why this is my favourite version of the Year Zero engine, because the more dice you roll, the more fun that you're having. I love the clatter of dice on the table. You've got more chance of being stressed, but more chance of succeeding. You can also push your roll. So if you roll all your dice and you don't roll a single 6, you can gain 1 point of stress which then on your next roll, you're going to have an additional one of those extra dice. You are then going to be rolling. You can then re-roll all of the dice, hoping to look for another 6 again. Simple as that. You only get to push it once. Now, when we talk about stress, you're going to think, well, why do you want to get stressed? Because you're going to get a lot of extra dice. However, so if you roll a 1 on any of the stress dice, you're then going to make a roll on the stress response table. So you're going to take a d6, just a single one. You're going to roll it, and then you're going to add your stress level, your current stress level, and then you're going to take your resolve off. You always get to reduce your resolve from this. If overall it's a 0, no effect. But if it's anything from a 1 through to a 7 plus, you're going to have specific effects. So you might become aggravated, lose all rolls based on empathy. You get -2 dice. And there are stress cards in the starter set as well to remember them. But the new character sheet, you can just tick them off on here. And as you can see, stress is completely irrelevant to hit points. Hit points don't reduce your attributes either on this version, which I really like. Just detailing then, here's about the skills, and then talents. It replays the talents here again, so we get to see the Colonial Marines talents replayed and all of the careers. But then there's a load here of general talents that the players can pick as they gain experience. When you start, you have to pick one specifically from your career, only one. Say there's a choice of 3, and then as you go through, you can get general talents. So combat veteran. In combat, you may keep your initiative card from the previous round instead of drawing a new one. Okay, stealth and combat. The combat rules, I think Free League did say they were reducing them, streamlining them. So it replays here the time again, so rounds, stretches, and shifts. But this game uses zones. So it's going to use, and you will either be adjacent, so right next to them, that alien breathing in your face. The short is same zone. Medium is an adjacent zone, so 1 zone away. Long is anywhere up to 4 zones away, and then extreme is even further away. This becomes important for things like moving, melee combat, and range combat, okay? And when the players are going to move, you get effectively to do 2 actions. But first, I just need to talk about stealth. Now, if you can, so I should have said earlier, actually, I think this is about the 3rd example you get. So these tables here, this game is full of these amazing tables. And it will take you, if you want to do something stealth, crawling into crawl spaces and stuff. Because what a successful stealth check will do at the start of a combat is you're going to, when initiative happens, the Games Master is going to shuffle up the dice. So he's shuffle up the cards, and he's going to deal them out randomly. But if you manage to succeed your stealth, you're always going to get the 1, which means you always go first. And obviously you've got that combat veteran. You're going to keep the 1 all on. So everyone else is still going to get an action after your stealth check, but you will always go first, okay? And that is how the surprise works. But when you're going to get into your action, you've got a choice. You can either do 2 quick actions or 1 full action and 1 quick action in here. And I like what they've done with some of the quick actions. So a full action is things like attacking, make a range attack, so close attack, range attack, jump, interaction, give first aid, things like that. Quick actions, move to adjacent zone, running away, move between short and adjacent range. So you can move twice, do quick actions, but more importantly, you can defend against a close combat attack, or you can dodge against a range attack. Because in earlier editions and other Year Zero engines, if you are going after someone and then you want to use a dodge or block, normally it takes up a full action. I like the fact this is moved to a quick action now. It's really good. I don't think I really need to explain how close combat rules work, but we got, additional rules for special attacks, disarming, shove, grapples, and again, another table here on how to work out, because, if you're going to do a close combat rule, you are rolling your strength plus combat, close combat, plus adding any stress dice you've got, roll the pool. Oh, you might actually have some equipment that is going to give you additional dice, or someone might be helping you, so the pools can grow quite large. And it'll just take you through this little chart of what goes on, and hopefully if you get at least 1/6, you're going to do some damage to them, and then you're going to roll the damage. And it works exactly the same as range combat, but we've got a few modifiers depending on whether they're behind cover and how far away they are. This is the supply dial that you're going to see in the starter set for just keeping track of things like ammunition. You can do full auto fires. You can also do things like single shots, which means you're then not going to get to roll up for the conserve ammo. If you do hit, you're then going to take some damage, and you're going to get to roll a number of damage or have static damage, depending on the weapon or whether it's the alien clawing away at your face. And if you are wearing armor, xenomorphs tend to be covered in armor. As the human, you're going to want to be wearing armor, because if you are hit, you do get to deduct that armor against it. You can get things like hiding against barriers and taking, that some of that will take damage and stuff. However, if your health ever drops to 0, you are broken or technically dying. And now you got to think about this from a hit point of view. You can only have one attribute at 5, and you might have the next one, so strength and agility might be at 4. So you're only ever going to have 4, maybe 5 health maximum. You're going to have a lot of players that might only have 1 or 2. And if you do ever go down to 0, you're going to be rolling on the crit table, which is quite deadly, because you can actually instantly die on this crit table, which I do like. We've got some rules here for like first aid, rallying, and trying to do it on your own, and how long it's going to take you to survive and sort of heal naturally. But we've got this critical injury table. You're going to roll 2d6, and it's going to take a number of shifts potentially to heal. It's going to tell you what a game effect and let you know whether it's lethal or not, and then sort of the time limit, because you still can roll at the end of it. But if you're rolling more than 44, there's a chance the player character is going to die. And if you roll over 64, you're dying instantly. So you can be disemboweled, had your head crushed, or impaled heart on there as well. Okay, so panic rolls. There are times in the games when the players are going to panic. But first of all, you've got to keep a track of your stress. And you're going to get stressed when we talked about it. One way was pushing rolls. Other one is you or a nearby PC suffers certain stress or panic response. A near PC panics, you become fatigued. A member of your own crew attacks you. A person nearby is revealed to be an android. Variety of other things like that. So what you want to then do is try and keep your panic in check. However, so you say you can go on and have as much panic as you want, and each panic is going to give you another d6, another chance to succeed, obviously potentially for the 1 as well, which then could then cause you to make panic rolls and stuff. But what you got to remember, so when you do a panic roll, you just roll a d6, you're going to add your stress. So if your stress is 7, for argument's sake, then you're going to subtract your resolve, which at most is ever going to be 5, and then you check this table over here. Again, it's got the reminder at the top here. So let's say on that example, we're on 2, noisy. Any enemy nearby, GM's discretion, are automatically alerted to your presence, because you just can't shut up. It's game over, man, game over. You're doing that sort of thing. And this is going to go all the way down to a +12, where you might be catonic, where you're just doomed. You're going to collapse on the floor, and you're going to stay there until your panic resets. There's a little bit worse than that though as well. We've got this mental trauma. So if you ever in a session rolled the 9+, you're going to go back at the end of the session, you're going to roll an empathy roll, and you're going to want to succeed at that, because if you don't, you could end up with some actual mental trauma that's going to affect your character for a long time. We've then got all the rules as you'd expect for fatigue, being out in a vacuum, falling, zero gravity, fire, radiations, synthetics. We then get a whole page and a bit on vehicle combat, and that is the end of stealth and combat. We then get the gear and tech section, and I like this. I do like when we get an arsenal section and you can actually see images of the weapons, and we can see all of them through here, even to the smart link. This is quite sad. They've only managed to kill 7 people, so that must be Vasquez. She didn't last very long. Obviously, we've got things like the pulse rifle. I don't know what this white one is. This is obviously from some sort of film I haven't actually seen yet. The pump action shotgun from Hicks as well, all the way through to the grenade, the RPG launcher here. We've then got other things like, the sentry guns, grenades, variety of other sort of suits of armor, the power lifter as you'd expect, classic End of Aliens. Sorry if that's a spoiler. Power lifter. We've got diagnostics, computers, things like that, personal trackers, transponders, tools, medical equipment, supplies, food and drinks, pharmaceutical stuff. Then we get into vehicles, and we're back with the wonderful art again. So I do like the actual attention to detail that we've got in here. Then obviously the drop ship here. And then we are into Hard Life Amongst the Stars, which is all the space travel and spaceship combat rules. Which is really interesting actually. So we've got details then to overcharge engines, which if you really want to, because failure is destroying the ships. Planetfall, when you are basically coming down in the drop ship, details for that. And then we're going to get into chartering space, and living in space gives the players an idea of what it's like to be out there, and whether you want to be in a deep space colony, and details of your living quarters, how much it's going to cost for your sort of living expenses. Because I was actually not expecting to see monetary reasons for going out and venturing and stuff. But if you're working on the colonist side, it just actually gives motivations to go out and earn money to go and do stuff, to go and investigate a crash site like you get at the start of Aliens. You know, where he's thinking, oh, if we find some alien technology, I can afford to feed my family for a few more weeks. You know, we're going to buy better equipment and things. We then get some spacecraft basics to be able to build your own, including the cost for building your own spaceships. Which things, you know, you've got attributes here, internal modules, so like air scrubbers, cargo bays, all the other stuff, you know, that you're going to have, you know, offensive armaments, defensive armaments in here, some basic ship upgrades. But if you don't want to worry about that and make your own, it has got the stats covered for here. We've got like the Star Scrub shuttle in here, and variety of other ships, again with wonderful designs, and the Nostradamus is in there as well. We then get a section on space combat. Should have said the back page actually covers the areas. So we've got here like contact, short, medium, long, and extreme. And you're going to start at different areas, and depending on what maneuver checks you do will move you to and from. And obviously you're going to use ship tokens so you can kind of see what's going on. And different members of the crew are going to add different things. For like the executive officer is going to give out orders and he gets to roll initiative. The science officer operates the sensors using the context skill. So it's going to involve all the players as they go. And the combat is broken down into 5 sections, again with examples. We've got a command phase initially, then we've got a sensor phase, movement phase, attack phase, and engineering phase. You know, so, and as you understand, command phase, everyone sorts out what they're doing, sort out the sensors to get your target lock. Movement, do you accelerate or decelerate up and down that chart? You're then going to attack. Hopefully you'll still be in range because you've done the right maneuver, and and the people that you're attacking, you nicely guessed what they were hoping to achieve. And then we get to do the engineering phase, which is basically healing or powering up shields and things. And like a human or one of the player characters, the ship is going to take damage. They have also got component damage summary tables, depending on how many hit points they get. They're going to roll on these random sort of, again, it's like a crit table as well. And then we've got major components, so different things are going to go wrong on the ship during the combat. Looks really fun. And then we've got this really good example here on the phases. Chapter 7, like I said, is basically being a games master. It's going to give you your 8 principles, really, of game principles. So use the films as influence, limit resources, make things scarce, stay in the shadows. Saying don't throw an alien up there the very first go. Slowly increase the pressure. Then let the players breathe. Like it. It's like, okay, they think they see something. They're going to know in their head because you're playing an alien game. It's going to be aliens in here. But then just give them a breather. Then start fueling their personal goals and agenda. Bring horrible death. PCs are going to die, and they're going to die horribly. And they did when I played this, because you see, you don't get a lot of hit points. And some of those aliens can pretty much, when they do their attacks, if they roll a 6, they're pretty much killing everything. And then reveal the universe as time goes on. It just then reminds you about the space horror, the sci-fi action, and the sense of adventure in here. Stress and horror, obviously you're going to be using the stress rolls. Don't overuse it, it does say in there. You know, you don't want to really abuse it, because some of the players are going to want to have high stress, but things start unwinding quite quickly. And actually, it does become some of the most fun, you know, some of the most fun experiences I've ever had is playing this game. Details then about the cinematic play, about breaking down between the 3 acts, how to run the pre-generated adventures. They have got more details in as well. And then just if you're going to go down the campaign setting, how to do your campaign setting. As you'd expect, you know, having your session 0 right at the start, and then what sort of focus you're going to have, you know, killing greed, you know, tide in the wars, new opportunities. You're going to have goals and things like that to go. It gives you some recommended reading list here as well of different things to go and read and different manuals you can. Then a big chunk of the book now becomes governments and corporations. So this actually I found quite interesting, looking at the corporations, because I know Weyland-Yutani, but I didn't really know what was going on Earth. So we've got like the United Americas in here, and the state of the Earth, and we've got what obviously was the Union of Progressive People, which is modern day Russia, independent core systems and colonies, variety of other stuff. Weyland-Yutani, actually probably the most famous corporation. Well, they are to me because I think they're the main two. Actually, it isn't Weyland at the end of the third one before Ripley kills us again. Spoiler. I think it came out in the 90s. So, but yeah, it's quite interesting. We then get into systems and planets, and this is a few pages just detailing the core systems, so you get to refer back to the map at the inside cover, and it'll just take you through an idea of what's going on the planets, what sort of classification the planet has, whether it's a terrestrial planet or whether it still needs to be colonized, whether the atmosphere is breathable and things like that. So it just gives you, as a games master, some tools and some ideas of if you want to go and send someone to a planet. I'm guessing the Tartarus section, because that is more covered later on. Again, probably going to be from one of the films or a TV series, could well be, but I should have spoken about the art before now, because this is a beautiful book and it looks so much nicer on the page, but it just gives you a real good idea of what's going on. Alien species. So we are now 200 pages through the book, so we've got about 120 to go, and this is going to just break down an awful lot of information about the type of aliens that they're going to come across, how to play them, an idea of scales here. So we've got the xenomorphs, so go from egg, facehugger to chest burster, all the way through to scout, soldier, and then the queen in here. I found this actually fascinating because you kind of watch aliens and you take in how they work and you get an idea of how they think. It's that sort of hive mentality, protect the queen, but it just gives a bit more of the background on how, as a games master, you're going to use them, and the sort of stats here. There for the facehugger, the Preto facehugger, and the Royal facehugger, because I didn't know there was different ones. So when a lot of the aliens attack, you can be rolling d6, and whatever you roll on that dice is actually going to tell you what they're going to do, which is quite good because it just takes that. Sometimes as a games master, you can go, they just hit and they do 2 damage, or they do a claw, or they do a bite, or whatever it may be. So here we've got the drone, the scout, and the stalker attacks. So you're going to roll a d6, and it might do a deadly grab, a tail spike, something like that, which I say it's very much in that sort of Free League Dragon Bane. And then the soldiers, sentries are going to do different attacks. They've all got different sort of hit points and observations and skills and stuff. I think I'd have liked a little bit more art in this section, but I think, you kind of know what an alien is. It does actually talk about in the book that, don't exclusively use aliens all the time, because it's an alien game and people would become, I think, they're familiar what's got. So we then get details on this neomorph, which I didn't know what a neomorph was. Again, I probably, because I'm not watching enough and taking in. And then we've got these other extrasolar species, like this giant harvester worm creature here. We've got lion worms, the Tanaka scorpionoids, which sounds hideously terrifying. Can't stand scorpions as it is. Chapter 11 is going to give you all the details on campaign play. And this I found really good because I'm a massive fan of random tables. So we've got a lot of those in here. But it gives you details really on whether, which route you're going to do. Start with the space truckers, colonial marines, the frontier colonists in here as well. But it's going to give you rules for creating your own new systems, the world creation, atmosphere, terrestrial, the planets, the size, what sort of missions they're going to get, what sort of adventure hook. The spaceport is currently quarantined, when they land there. Just give you some random stuff to build, some objects, some cargo that they might need to go and transport somewhere. So you can play this a little bit like Traveller as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be aliens, though aliens will be coming in at some stage. They could be transporting an egg that they don't know about. Expeditions here, missions, sponsorship, complications, encounters. I say this whole section so much better than the first edition section. I remember looking at it going, I do not know, even down to the shore leave table. Again, some of this might be in the first edition, and I don't mean to sort of say, but for me, this is a lot easier and cleaner to read in here. We've got a load of NPCs in here. as well. And then we're going to get into specific areas, which is what I'm saying. I think that tutorial section is probably from a film or things like that. So let's talk about the systems and colonies. And then we're going to get into like Jackson's Star, which that does sound familiar, and I don't know why it sounds familiar. And it's got a map of it, a variety of NPCs, some adventure hooks, what the colonists are doing, and then we've got this Novigrad station as well, which again sounds familiar. I'm not sure whether that's the one from Alien 3, because I remember that being a specific science place. I didn't notice a basketball court in the map, but that would have been a bit of a giveaway. But we're then into the appendix. I know I blasted through about 80 pages then, but there's some great stuff in those 80 pages. And life paths, it does say you don't have to use these. Use them, because it's just going to give you additional ideas of why, and motivations of why the players are on there, and sort of life events, things that happened before you picked up your player characters. And you can have, random careers here, and then what favours and disasters, things that have gone right and wrong. And then your career posting, where were you actually posted? What did you do? Finally, we then get Last Survivor, which is the solo mode. Okay, it seems quite a hard solo mode, because the only benefit I could see in here is obviously you could play a solo android because they get left alone and you might survive a little bit longer. But all you seem to do, well, you're going to get more XP more often. If you survive the first session, you're going to get an extra talent. That seems to be it. That's all I could see. But I'm just going to show you this. I haven't got into it. I haven't played this or even had a proper look at the solo rules yet, because that's a completely separate video, and there's some really good people out there that cover solo rules and do them really well. So I'm sure there'll be solo rules videos out for this soon. But it looked quite interesting, but I just need to spend a little bit of time. To fully cover this, I need to spend actually time rolling it. And then we're going to get finally the character sheet, which seems a little bit busy, but gives you everything you want. So if you haven't got the cards, you've got all your panic and stress responses down here in the left. Got room for equipment, gears, tiny items that you got, your signature item, say your stats and the skills underneath. So it does make it nice and easy. Damage, good luck having those boxes, but the reason the extra boxes there, because if you're going to be playing one of the synthetics, you're going to have a little bit more health, so you're going to stay around a little bit longer in there. Okay. And then finally, we've got the index, and then we get this, which is the space combat grid that I spoke about. So that is it. Let's just get back to me and I'll tell you my final thoughts. This is out very soon. You should have pre-ordered it by now. It is utterly amazing. I'd say I love the fact that we've lost a quarter of the book. I can't even tell what quarter they've lost. And I did try and work it out before I was going through the videos. Say the rules seem a lot more condensed. They do seem quicker, easier. The stress mechanic is nicer. Not failing automatically on that one on your stress dice, I think, is absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of lore in here. The book is cleaner. It's better looking, if a book can be better looking. So the artwork is phenomenal. Gone is all that horrible black background with the white writing that made me want to go to sleep. It's good. It really is good. I will follow this up with the starter set, so I'm hoping to get that played soon as well. I might even do a video see what's included, but I was really impressed with this. When I found out the second edition was coming out, I basically sold all my first edition stuff, because I was like, I love what they did, but I can't see me playing it beyond the cinematic setting, which made me feel sad, which is what I sort of drifted back towards Mothership, because these are two very much itches that are very, very the same. One uses D6, one uses D100, but stress mechanics and things like that, it's in essence the same sort of game. And I've got Mothership is a slightly better game for me based on first edition, because I can see Mothership playing a campaign. I can now see me running a campaign with this new edition of Alien. I think what they've done in here, and all the random tables, the fact that it seems very easy to build a planet, to build out the adventure that the players want to. You've got the 3 specific different areas, whether you go down the truckers, the colonists, or the space marine areas, or have a little bit of a mix. make sure you get the corporate executive. Convince one of your players to play a corporate executive. Or if not, as a games master, you're going to have to put an NPC corporate executive in, because they are going to be one of the big drivers for the really some of the nasty stuff that's going to go on, because they're not going to care about the lives of the people, because they've got the money to. Then they want to make money for them and themselves and the corporate and the fame. Honestly, Free League, this is really good. I'm really impressed with this one. And I'm just going to elephant in the room. You know, if you've been following my channel for a while, and I already had this when I picked this up on my Discord, people were like, you know, this is the Year Zero engine. I do. And I've been saying for a long time, other than Blade Runner, this is my favourite, and I think it's the best version of the Free League Year Zero engine, because you get a bigger pool of dice, and a bigger pool of dice is fun for two reasons. One, you got more chance of succeeding. Two, it's three reasons actually. Two, they look and sound amazing on the table. But three, you get to play with the stress mechanic, and the stress mechanic is really what makes this an exceptional game. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Use the links down in the video description below to go and get yourself the PDF copy once it's available, or just go and buy it anywhere if you haven't already pre-ordered this. So the late pledges are gone there, so yeah, you are back up to, you know, normal shops. But such a sigh of relief, because sometimes when second editions come out, they get worse. This feels so much better. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.